So I'm going to explain my fairly maybe controversial or at least unorthodox view on what's happening in the Hollywood strike situation right now. I put out a video recently giving you guys my take, my analysis, and in that video I basically expressed that I have empathy for both sides here. Okay, even though I am a songwriter, I am an artist, I don't just 100% side with the writers and the actors versus those horrible, mean, evil, capitalist pigs on the studio side. That's not my point of view. And I actually got a couple of comments kind of questioning me on that and saying, what's with that, Jesse? Like, you're a songwriter, you're an artist, you're a creative. Why don't you just side with the creatives in this, right? Because that's what we all do as creatives. We all side together, right? I don't, okay? And I'm gonna explain to you guys why I don't think that makes a lot of sense. I see this, especially even in our TV film sync licensing world, which is obviously it's connected to what's happening in Hollywood, obviously, but we have our own dynamic. I have always seen that the creative side of our industry plus the publishers, which are usually the music libraries, that's basically that's been my path essentially. We've been partners throughout all this. Sometimes our interests are not aligned, right? Sometimes we feel that some of these libraries maybe take advantage of new composers, maybe take a little too much in terms of creeping into their writer share, or not evenly splitting out sync fees, and we can have different opinions on if some of those deals are predatory, unfair, all that kind of stuff. But there's also more times than not where our interests are intricately aligned, that we don't succeed, or I should say the library doesn't succeed unless we succeed, right? So they don't get paid, they don't get royalties, they don't get anything unless they're securing some placements for us. And that's a vast majority of what our industry is about, okay? So I guess what I'm doing is I'm taking that backdrop of what I've experienced in sync licensing, and I'm kind of applying it over to the Hollywood model, which might be dumb. Maybe I shouldn't do that. But I kind of see this as not us versus them, but we are in this together. But in this together doesn't mean that everybody gets what they want all the time. So the writers and the actors, they obviously want to renegotiate. They want higher rates. They want higher payouts from the streaming services. I totally empathize and get that. You're looking at the person who's shared with you guys his royalties and shown you that streaming gets you 90% pay cut. Okay, so I'm not happy about that. I don't love seeing those royalties in my account. But at the same time, I'm grateful that something is coming through there. I do find optimism and hope that in the future, as more advertising money, and that's what you're starting to see happening with some of these streaming services, more ad money and more lower tier membership levels are coming in with ads. So you're going to see some more income going in there. I think as time goes on, you will see higher numbers of subscribers and more income going into these streaming services. But right now, they're kind of in the growth phase. Okay, so a lot of these streaming services, if they're profitable, Netflix, actually, I looked up after that video, Netflix is profitable, but many of the other ones are still not. They're in that growth phase where they're just, they're highly in debt, and they're just investing tons and tons of money because they just want to grow their subscription platforms and have a place to land for people who are canceling the cable and coming into the streaming world. And I think obviously with the pandemic, there was just this huge bubble that was created because Netflix seemed to be doing okay, or at least they were growing. And then all the theaters were shut down. And so everybody panicked, like, oh God, what do we do? Well, Netflix is growing, their stock price is going up. Let's just do the direct streaming deal. And so now we're seeing, though, the limits of that there were probably way too many services created. The consumer base got fatigued. People aren't, wanting to pay for 4 different streaming services. Anyways, I'm getting way sidetracked on all of that. Going back to my sort of point of view on this, I see us as partners. We're all in this together. The same thing I've been saying to you guys about the AI space. I don't see it as tech companies versus us music creators. I know some of you guys can feel that way, and we can be angry and scared and feel all kinds of emotions about this stuff. But I don't find that mindset and that framing ever gets to solutions. It usually just becomes more of a let's fight, and that's not fair, and that's not fair. And by the way, the word fair there's no such thing as fair. Like, fair is just somebody's opinion, pretty much at the end of the day, right? Fair comes down to what can you negotiate for? Like, how much can you get versus what's actually available on the other side of the negotiating table. And then whenever you both say, all right, I can deal with that, we call that fair. Okay, so there's no such thing as an objective measurement of fair. It just doesn't exist. So for me, letting go of that and thinking about it more in terms of if we're in this together, right? Because the studios need the actors and the writers, right? Do the writers and actors need studios? Well, for the longest time, yes, because they controlled most of the distribution. What's interesting right now is most of these actors and writers, if they wanted to, it's going to take a lot more work and probably a lot more effort and some education. they could go right here to YouTube. They could come right to the people. They don't have to go through large distribution channels. Again, it's a much bigger grind. You have to earn your audience. You don't basically get it built in by going into a theater or go to a TV show that's established. But people are hungry for new original creative content. You might see what could be another possibility out of this strike is that new amazing online shows that just go directly to us that are either ad sponsored or maybe, you get a couple of episodes for free and you have to pay for more. I don't know. There could be some interesting things, but I want to just always remind myself that in our world, the libraries are essential partners to us and they have valid concerns and points of view on this as well. So I feel the same for the Hollywood studios because, it was those Hollywood studios, TV production companies, and quote unquote bigwigs that put out the content that allowed me to have an income with my music, right? So how am I going to get just pissed off at them and mad at them and, oh my gosh, you guys are just being so greedy? Yeah, there's probably certain situations where they are, but you could also make the same argument for the writers and the actors to say like, well, you guys are just being greedy. There's not a lot of money being made out of these streaming services. The revenue's not there yet, and you guys are just trying to take a much bigger share than it's probably worth. You can make that argument as well. So rather than getting into that nitpicky back and forth, who's being more greedy, who's, what's fair, what's not fair, all that's worthless to me. All of that gets you nowhere. It doesn't lead you to an actual solution on any of this kind of stuff, at least in your own thinking. For me, what gets me to a solution is to think about it's not good versus bad. It's good versus good. That really is what it comes down to. The writers and the actors have a great point of view. Studios have a great point of view as well. They're both trying to keep themselves in business, right? That's one thing they both have in common. Always look for those common grounds. That usually gets you to a negotiating table to find some sort of a solution. So they both want to stay in business. They both want to be profitable. They both want to keep working. They want to remain relevant. They're both probably concerned about AI. You don't think the studios, or which one was the studios? This one? You don't think the studios are worried about AI replacing them? They should be if they're not, right? So when we kind of create a little bit more of a we conversation around this, then it doesn't feel so I don't know, counterproductive, I guess is the way. I just see that as like, you got to take a side, one or the other. I'm like, how does that get us anywhere closer to figuring out how to deal with this, any of this kind of stuff? So in my channel here, you guys know that primarily I champion you, the composers, the producers, because that's how I see myself. That's what I did in my career. And that's basically just the side of the table I've always been on. I've never been a library owner. I've never been a publisher. I've never really been on any of that kind of stuff. So I just resonate, obviously, emotionally more with you guys. But you know that I've stuck up for music libraries quite a bit on my channel. Okay, I bring them on here. I want to be empathetic towards them. I want to ask them what they're thinking about AI. And we're going to be having some new interviews actually with CEOs coming soon, and a new service, which I haven't announced yet, but it's coming, where you guys will get to jump on Zoom calls with library CEOs. So I've just had this different point of view on this from day one, and I think I'm just telling you my experience with it. I have found much more peace just mentally and in my life and in my business relationships. And I think more profitability when I think this way, when I think about not me versus you, but me plus you. Like, how do we come together, find our common ground, figure out what we need each other for, how we can come to the middle ground to figure out, okay, yes, I want you as my music library to earn money when I earn money, right? Or I want to make sure that you are basically working pretty much on my behalf while I'm doing other things. I'm working on other music, or I might even be working for another library in the future. But that music that I gave to you, you have an incentive because you earn money from it to shop it and get me placements and work really, really hard when I'm not even paying attention to it. So I think with that mindset, it definitely opens up the doors for new possibilities for us. And this is just something that I notice with a lot of artists, a lot of producers, a lot of musicians and bands, is we can kind of get in our own way with this stuff. And it's like this, I don't know. I call it kind of a victim mentality. It definitely sounds like a lot of whining and complaining to me. I'll just be honest. That's what it sounds like to me. And I can empathize to a certain degree to say sometimes things feel very unfair and very crappy. And there's a time and place to feel that way, to go like, this is just not feeling good. I don't like where this is going. I'm not happy about this. Great. I don't want to take away anybody's, right, of course, to feel how you want to feel. Go through the feeling, feel it. I felt it when I was, hearing about these strikes. I was like, God, like we're just getting through this AI stuff and figuring out we haven't even gone through it yet, but it already feels like it's beating us up. And then here we go, another huge obstacle. And I felt it too. I felt it just like you guys. But there's a part of my brain that goes, all right, that's enough. whatever it is you're doing, it's starting to turn into a pity party. It's starting to turn into like a 2-year-old going, that's not fair. I don't like that. It's turning into too much of that. We're not being the adults in the room, and we're not looking at solutions, and we're not thinking about what can we do to change, adjust, alter. Like I said in that last video, if all scripted shows are coming to a halt, does that mean you should just cry about it and just be done? You can, or you can think, well, reality shows are probably going to get popular again. Sports are probably going to become even more interesting and relevant, and maybe even innovative. Independent content might be coming up online. So again, for me, keeping the opportunity glasses on is what I've termed it. Always has served me well, because it keeps me out of that kind of dark despair and depressing state of mind, and it keeps me more open to the possibilities of the future. So long rant today. Sorry about that. Hopefully that was helpful. I don't know if it was helpful, but more of a selfish video on my part that I just want to share a little bit more of. I do think that this is one of these things that artists kind of get in their own way on. Is it's really just the mindset and the thinking. It's not the talent. It's not the skills, nothing like that. It's really just more of like, if you want to call it a business mindset, if you want to call it a just reframing of how you're thinking about our industry, whatever you want to call it, I think when we can kind of do that, you'll find that the world becomes unlocked for you, and you won't be remaining in this kind of, oh, woe is me, they're taking advantage of us again, and there's no hope, and this is happening, and that's happening. You know, it's kind of your choice if you want to stay there. Or, you know, we're all probably going to feel that at some point, but it's your choice, I think, if you want to stay there or if you want to just move on.